The rain was coming down, like God himself was trying to wash away every sin in New Orleans when I found that wallet. My name is Serafina Delacroix, but everyone calls me Sarah. I'm 22, heavy my whole life. The kind of heavy that makes people look away when you walk by. That night, walking home from my cleaning job at the Meridian Business Complex, my sneakers squelching against the broken pavement of Riverside Street, I saw it lying there in a puddle that reflected the neon glow of Boudreaux's corner store. You know that feeling when your stomach is so empty, it actually hurts. When you've been surviving on ramen noodles and hope for so long that finding $5 feels like winning the lottery. That was my reality. Mama needed her insulin, and Daddy's work at the docks had been spotty at best. The math was simple and cruel. Medicine for Mama, or food for the family. We'd been choosing medicine. I picked up that wallet, water soaking through my thin jacket. The leather was soft, expensive in a way that felt foreign against my work-rough fingers. When I opened it, my breath caught. Bills, lots of them. More money than I'd seen in one place in my entire life. Hundreds, maybe thousands. My hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. Have you ever held someone else's salvation in your hands? Because that's what this felt like. Every bill in that wallet was a month of Mama's medication. Groceries that weren't expired, maybe even fixing the leak in our roof that turned our living room into a swimming pool every time it rained like this. The driver's license behind the clear plastic window showed Maximiliano Ashworth Beauregard 3. Even his name sounded rich. The address made my heart sink. Garden District. Of course. The photo showed a man maybe in his late 20s, dark hair, serious expression, the kind of jawline that belonged in magazines. Everything about him screamed money, privilege, the kind of life that existed in a completely different universe from mine. But it was the family photo tucked behind the license that really got to me. A beautiful woman with kind eyes, an older couple who looked distinguished and proud, and him with his arm around what must have been his father. They all looked so perfect, so put together, like they'd never known what it felt like to choose between food and medicine. I stood there in that storm, water streaming down my face, mixing with tears I didn't even realize were falling. Behind me, I could hear the familiar sounds of my neighborhood. Mrs. Boudreaux locking up her store, a jazz trumpet wailing from somebody's radio, the distant hum of the streetcar making its final run of the night. Come on, Sarah, I whispered to myself. You know what you have to do. I did know. Even as every practical bone in my body screamed at me to just take what I needed, I knew. Mama and Daddy had raised me better than that. They'd taught me that your character isn't measured by what you do when people are watching, but by what you do when no one will ever know. The walk home took me past all the reminders of why that money would matter. The Landry's place had a tarp, where their roof should be. Mrs. Chen's grandson was selling newspapers at the bus stop, even though he couldn't be more than 10 years old. Old man Thibodeau was sitting on his porch in the rain, too proud to go inside and admit his heat had been shut off. By the time I reached our front steps, I was sobbing. Not the pretty kind of crying you see in movies, but the ugly, desperate kind that comes from your gut. Through our thin walls, I heard Mama and Daddy talking. Her insulin's running low again, Daddy was saying, his voice heavy with exhaustion. How low? Maybe a week's worth. The silence that followed was louder than the storm. I heard they're hiring at the night shift cleaning crew downtown. Sarah could know. Mama's voice was sharp. That girl is already working herself to death. She's 22 and she looks 40 some days. I didn't wait to hear more. I stood up, wiped my face, and made a decision that probably saved my soul and broke my heart at the same time. I was going to return every single dollar. The Garden District was 4 miles through flooded streets, past neighborhoods that got progressively nicer, until I felt like I was visiting another planet. Broken sidewalks gave way to smooth concrete. Corner stores with barred windows became boutiques with fancy displays. Houses grew larger, yards greener, cars shinier. When I found his house at 1247 Prytania Street, it took my breath away. 3 stories of pristine white with dark green shutters, wrap-around porches with columns that looked like they belonged in a museum. Even in the rain, I could see the care that went into every detail, the kind of money that meant never having to choose between medicine and food. I stood at the edge of the property, suddenly aware of how I must look. Hair plastered to my head, cheap jacket soaked through, shoes making squishing sounds. I probably looked exactly like what someone from this neighborhood would expect from someone from mine. Desperate, dangerous, or both, but I'd come this far. I walked up that long driveway, past cars that cost more than my family's house, and knocked on the fairy tale door with its stained glass panels and brass fixtures. Heavy footsteps, multiple locks being undone. The door opened just a crack, held by a chain. And I appeared in the gap, dark and guarded. Yes, the voice was deep, cultured, with just a hint of the South, softened by education and money. "I found your wallet," I said, pulling it from my jacket and holding it up. The chain rattled as he undid it quickly. The door swung open, and I got my first real look at him. The photo didn't do him justice. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that was mussed and eyes the color of good coffee. He was wearing pajama pants and an LSU t-shirt, both probably worth more than my entire wardrobe. But his expression caught me off guard. Not relief, not gratitude, something harder, suspicious. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked, not reaching for the wallet. "Riverside Street. About 3 hours ago. I was walking home from work at 11:30 at night." Heat flooded my cheeks. Of course, someone like him wouldn't understand that some people worked cleaning jobs that ran until all hours. "I clean offices downtown. I was walking home when I saw your wallet in a puddle." He studied me, his gaze taking in my soaked clothes, my worn shoes, my neighborhood written all over me like a scarlet letter. I could practically see the calculations running through his mind. "And you just decided to bring it back?" In the middle of the night, the question hit me like a slap. The implication was clear. People like me don't do things like this without an angle. "Yes," I said quietly, holding the wallet out to him. "I decided to bring it back." He still didn't take it. "What's your name?" "Serafina Delacroix." "And you walked all the way from Riverside to Garden District in this storm, just to return a wallet to a complete stranger?" When he put it like that, it did sound crazy. "Because it was the right thing to do," I said. Something flickered across his face. He reached out then, his fingers brushing mine as he took the wallet. His skin was warm and soft, the hands of someone who'd never had to scrub floors or choose between food and medicine. He opened it, checking the contents, probably wondering how much a poor girl from Riverside had managed to resist stealing. "It's all there," I said, hurt creeping into my voice. "I didn't take anything." He looked up sharply, and for just a moment, I thought I saw shame cross his features. "Thank you," he said, 2 words. Like I was the pizza delivery girl. I turned to go, desperate to get away from his suspicious eyes and his beautiful house, and the reminder of everything my life wasn't. Wait, he was reaching into the wallet, pulling out what looked like a $100 bill. "For your trouble." That's when something inside me broke. Here I was, soaked to the bone, having walked for miles in a storm to do the right thing. Being treated like a potential thief who needed to be paid off. Like my honesty was a service he could purchase. "Keep it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I didn't do it for money. I just thought I know what you thought. But not everyone from my neighborhood is looking for a handout." I walked away before he could respond, past his perfect cars, away from his perfect life. But as I reached the street, I heard his voice one more time, softer now, almost lost in the rain. "Serafina," I didn't turn around. I kept walking, back toward reality. Back toward a world where doing the right thing didn't always feel like punishment. As I walked through those perfect Garden District streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The street grew dimmer as I left his world behind, perfect sidewalks giving way to cracked pavement. Mansions shrinking back into the small, proud homes of Riverside. The rain stopped just as I reached our front door. I stood there for a moment, looking up at our little house with its peeling paint and patched roof, and tried to feel proud of what I'd done. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard footsteps. Coming up the street, slow, deliberate, like someone was looking for an address. I turned around and my heart nearly stopped. There, under the streetlight at the corner, stood a figure I recognized. Tall, dark, completely out of place in my neighborhood. Maximiliano Beauregard had followed me home. My heart was hammering against my ribs. There he was, standing under the flickering streetlight like he'd materialized from some fever dream. In the Garden District, he looked perfectly at home. Here, surrounded by our small houses and broken sidewalks. He looked like a prince who'd wandered into the wrong fairy tale. Then his eyes found mine, and he started walking toward me. Each step felt like it lasted an hour as he navigated around potholes, past Mrs. Chen's garden where she grew vegetables in old coffee cans, around the Landry's car that hadn't run in 2 years. "What are you doing here?" I asked when he reached our front gate. He stopped but didn't open it, like he understood that would be crossing some invisible line. "I don't know," he said, and the honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Have you ever had someone look at you like they were seeing you for the first time? That's how Maximiliano was looking at me now. I was sitting in my house, in my perfect living room with my perfect furniture, and I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. That not everyone from your neighborhood is looking for a handout. I realized I'd never met anyone who turned down money before. Not once in my entire life. So you followed me home. I got in my car and started driving. I told myself I was just going for a ride, but somehow I ended up here. I wanted to apologize. For what? For treating you like you were trying to scam me. For assuming you wanted something from me. For offering you money like that was the only reason someone would do something decent. I wasn't expecting that. Apology accepted. The front door opened behind me and Daddy's voice called out, "CRO. Everything all right out here, baby?" I turned to see him in the doorway, taking in the scene. Daddy was a big man, broad shoulders and calloused hands from 20 years working the docks. Seeing a stranger at our gate, while his daughter stood outside alone, he looked ready for whatever came next. "It's fine, Daddy, just talking to someone." "Sir," Maximiliano said, straightening up. "I'm sorry to bother you so late. I'm Maximiliano Beauregard. Your daughter returned my wallet tonight, and I wanted to thank her properly." Daddy's eyebrows rose. He knew the Beauregard name. Old money, old power, the kind of family that had streets named after them. That right? Well, that sounds like our CRO, always doing the right thing, even when it costs her. There was weight in the way he said it, and I saw Maximiliano's eyes flick back to me, starting to understand that my decision had cost me more than time and effort. Mama appeared in the doorway to her graying hair in curlers, old bathrobe tied tight. She took one look at the scene, and her protective instincts kicked in. "Sierra, honey, you come inside now, it's late." Mrs. Delacroix Maximiliano spoke up. "I'm sorry for the late hour. I just wanted to thank your daughter. She went out of her way to return something I lost, and I'm grateful." Mama studied him with sharp eyes. "What kind of something?" "My wallet. With quite a bit of money in it." Mama's eyes widened, and I saw her exchange a look with Daddy. They both knew what that money could have meant to our family, and she brought it back to you. All of it, every dollar. The pride that crossed Mama's face made my chest tight. "That's our girl," she said softly. After some conversation about the wallet and gratitude, Maximiliano walked away, back toward wherever he'd parked his expensive car. Daddy hugged me tight, smelling like honest work and Old Spice and home. "We raised you right," he said into my hair. "Even if it hurts sometimes, we raised you right." The next morning, Mama called my name from the kitchen. "Sierra, you need to see this." I stumbled out of bed and found her at the window looking out over our front yard. Sitting on our front porch was a large brown paper bag. There was an envelope, taped to the side with my name written in careful handwriting. Inside was expensive paper with a note. "Serafina, my grandmother always told me that when someone does you a kindness, you should find a way to return it. This isn't payment for your honesty, it's an investment in mine. There's enough here for whatever your family needs right now. Please don't refuse it. This isn't about charity or pity or guilt. It's about recognizing that good people deserve good things. The world needs more people like you. Maybe this will help make sure it gets them." Inside the bag were groceries. Not just any groceries, but the kind we hadn't been able to afford in months. Fresh vegetables, real meat, milk that wasn't powdered, bread that wasn't doubled, and, at the bottom, a pharmacy bag with Mama's insulin and a receipt showing it was already paid for. I sank down onto the porch steps and started crying. Not desperate crying, but something that felt like relief and gratitude and confusion all mixed together. Mama sat beside me, holding that insulin like it was made of gold. "He didn't have to do this," she said. "I know, but he did. I know." That evening, I was getting ready for work when Mama called from the living room. "Sierra, there's someone here to see you." It wasn't Maximiliano. It was a woman I'd never seen before, maybe 55 or 60. With silver hair swept back elegantly, and clothes that whispered money instead of shouting it. "Miss Delacroix," she said, standing when she saw me. "I'm Cordelia Beauregard, Maximiliano's mother." Here was the woman from the photo in the wallet. Beautiful in the way that came from good bones and better nutrition, with kind eyes that seemed to see everything. "I came to thank you and to apologize for my son's behavior last night." We talked for 20 minutes about ordinary things. She asked about Mama's sewing, about Daddy's work, about my job. She listened like she actually cared about the answers. As she was leaving, she asked, "What do you think of my son?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about the suspicion in his eyes, followed by confusion, followed by something that might have been shame. About the groceries and insulin, and his admission that he didn't understand why anyone would do something for free. I think he's trying to figure out who he wants to be, I said finally. Mrs. Beauregard smiled. That's the most hopeful thing anyone has said about him in years. That night at work, cleaning the 14th floor executive offices, I heard voices from the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see him. Maximiliano Beauregard, surrounded by men in expensive suits. The Riverside Development Project needs to move forward, one was saying. Property values are low, acquisition costs minimal. We could break ground by Christmas. They were talking about my neighborhood. What about displacement? Maximiliano asked. What about it? It's low-income housing, half should be condemned anyway. We'll be doing them a favor. How many families would be displaced? About 300 units. Maybe 900 people total. 900 people. Almost everyone I knew. And where exactly are these 900 people supposed to go? That's not really our problem. We're developers, not social workers. I watched Maximiliano stand up, his hands flat on the table. Do you have any idea what it costs to find new housing in this city? Do you know how long the waiting lists are for affordable apartments? Max, you're being emotional. It's just business. It's just business to destroy 900 lives. We're not destroying anything. We're improving it. Luxury condos, upscale retail, maybe a boutique hotel. Beautiful for who? For people who can afford to live there. I saw the exact moment when something shifted in his expression, when he made a decision that was going to change everything. Gentlemen, I'm withdrawing Beauregard Holdings from this project. The silence was complete. You're what? I said, I'm withdrawing. As of right now, we're out. Max, you can't be serious. Then you should have thought about that before planning to destroy a neighborhood full of good people. Good people. Have you actually been to Riverside? Maximiliano's voice, when he answered, was so quiet I had to strain to hear it. As a matter of fact, I have been to Riverside, and you're right, it's not the Garden District. It's better. It's full of people who know the difference between charity and kindness, between having money and having worth. People who would walk for miles in a storm to return something that didn't belong to them, even when they needed it more than the person they were returning it to. He was talking about me, about last night, about the wallet, about everything that had happened between us. It means everything. It means there are still people in this world who do the right thing because it's right, not because it's profitable. And I'll be damned if I'm going to bulldoze their homes to build condos for people who wouldn't know the right thing if it bit them in the ass. With that, he gathered his papers and walked out. By the time I finished my shift, it was nearly midnight. I was exhausted, emotionally drained. But as I walked out of the Meridian building, I saw him again. Maximiliano was sitting on a bench across the street, still in his expensive suit, looking up at the building like he was trying to figure out what he'd just done. Our eyes met across the street. He stood up and started walking toward me. My feet felt like lead as I crossed that street. When I was close enough to see the exhaustion in his face, I stopped. You heard, he said. It wasn't a question. I heard. We stood there in the orange glow of streetlights, two people from completely different worlds who'd somehow stumbled into each other's stories. How much money did you just walk away from? I asked. Does it matter? It matters to me. Because I need to know if you did it for the right reasons. What would be the right reasons? Because it was wrong to displace all those families. Because people's homes matter more than profit. And what would be the wrong reasons? Because you felt guilty about how you treated me. Because you wanted to impress me. You want to know the truth? All of those things went through my mind. Every single one. But in the end, I walked away because I kept thinking about what you said. About understanding being something you earn, not something you buy. I realized I've been trying to buy understanding my whole life. What do you mean? I mean, I've never had to earn anything. Not respect, not friendship, not love. It was all just handed to me because of my name, my money. But when you turned down that $100, when you looked at me like I'd insulted you, no one had ever looked at me like that before. So what happens now? I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. What situation? Doing something because it's right, instead of because it's profitable. That made me laugh. Welcome to how the rest of us live. Is it always this terrifying? Pretty much. We started walking without discussing it, just falling into step. I wasn't sure where we were going, but it felt natural. Can I ask you something? He said after a few blocks. What's it like? Worrying about money, really worrying. You really want to know. Yes, it's like drowning in slow motion. Every month, every week, sometimes every day, you're doing calculations in your head. Can I afford milk this week, or should I buy generic cereal instead? Is it worth running the air conditioning, or should we suffer through the heat? Can Mama's prescription wait another week, or will she end up in the hospital? I paused, looking up at the tall buildings around us. It's exhausting, not just physically but mentally, emotionally. You start seeing everything in terms of what it costs versus what you can afford. A movie ticket isn't just entertainment, it's 3 days of lunch. A new pair of shoes isn't just shoes, it's half the electric bill. And the worst part is, you start to feel like you're failing at something everyone else makes look easy. Failing at what? At life, at taking care of the people you love, at being the kind of person who has choices, instead of just surviving whatever options are left. Maximiliano was quiet for a long time. We'd walked to the French Quarter without realizing it. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what now? For living my entire life without understanding that. For being the kind of person who thinks a $100 tip fixes everything." We ended up at Café du Monde, which stays open 24 hours. The place was nearly empty, except for a few tourists and locals who worked odd shifts like I did. Max ordered beignets and coffee for both of us. When the chicory coffee hit his tongue, his expression was priceless. "It's an acquired taste," I said, trying not to laugh. Is everything in this city an acquired taste? Pretty much. But once you acquire it, nothing else compares. We sat there for hours, talking about everything. He told me about growing up with more bedrooms than some apartment buildings, about private school and European vacations. I told him about learning to cook when I was 8, about sharing a bedroom with my cousin, about the scholarship I'd almost gotten to LSU before Daddy got hurt. But we also talked about books, movies, the way the city looked different in early morning light. I discovered Max had read everything James Baldwin ever wrote. He discovered I knew more about local politics than most people he went to fundraising dinners with. "You should have gone to college," he said. Should have, could have, would have. That's not how life works for most people. It could still happen. With what money? I work 6 days a week just to keep our heads above water. What if money wasn't an issue? I gave him a look. Money is always an issue when you don't have it. But hypothetically, Max. Stop. Don't do that. Do what? Try to fix me. I'm not broken. I'm just poor. There's a difference. You're right. I'm sorry. I did it again, didn't I? Assumed money could solve everything. It's not your fault. It's how you were raised. But it's something you're going to have to unlearn if you want to understand how the world actually works for most people. Will you help me unlearn it? I mean, the question caught me off guard. There was something vulnerable in his voice. Why would you want it? Because I don't want to be the kind of person who thinks displacing 900 people is just business. Because I don't want to live in a bubble anymore. Because you make me want to be better than I am. Have you ever had someone say something that changed everything? That's what Max's words felt like. What exactly are you asking me? I'm asking if you'd be willing to show me your world. Really show me. Let me understand what it means to worry about money, to make impossible choices, to live without the safety net I've always taken for granted. And what do I get out of this educational experience? Whatever you want. That's not an answer. The truth. I don't know what I can offer you that you'd want. I can't take back how I treated you that first night. I can't change the fact that I've lived a privileged life while you've had to fight for everything. I can't even promise I won't screw this up somehow. Then why should I say yes? Because maybe we could learn something from each other. Maybe I could understand what it means to live with purpose, instead of just wealth. And maybe you could see what it's like to have choices, real choices, about what you want your life to look like. I wanted to say no. Every practical instinct was screaming at me to walk away. This man was dangerous, not because he was cruel, but because he was offering me something I'd never dared to want. The possibility that my life could be different. But sitting there in that nearly empty cafe, watching the sun start to rise over the Mississippi River, I realized I was already in too deep to walk away. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, I'll show you my world. But there are conditions. Name them." First, no money. You don't pay for things. You don't buy your way out of uncomfortable situations. If we're doing this, you live like I live. Agreed. Second, no special treatment because of your name. No calling ahead, no using connections. You get treated exactly like any other person would. Agreed. Third, when you've had enough, when this stops being interesting, you tell me. You don't just disappear back to your mansion and leave me wondering what I did wrong. Something painful flickered across his face. Has someone done that to you before? Not someone like you. But yes, people have left, and they usually don't bother with explanations. I won't do that to you. How do I know that? Because I'm telling you right now that I won't. And because I hope that by the time we get to know each other better, you'll know me well enough to trust that I mean what I say. We'll see. We left Caf du Monde as the city was waking up around us. Street sweepers were cleaning up, shop owners were opening, and the smell of fresh bread was drifting from bakeries. So where do we start? Max asked. With you getting to work on time like everyone else, I don't usually punch a time clock. Then how do people know you're actually working? They, Don't, I guess. I shook my head. Rule number 1 of not being rich. Your time belongs to someone else, and they're keeping track of every minute. The streetcar was crowded with people, heading to jobs that started early and paid little. Max looked around like he was seeing a different species. These people are all going to work, he asked quietly. It's 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. Where else would they be going? An older woman looked up from her newspaper. Honey, she said to Max, some of us been working since before you were born. Ain't nothing new about it. Max's cheeks flushed, but he nodded respectfully. Yes, ma'am. I'm starting to understand that. The woman studied him. You lost, baby. This streetcar don't go to the Garden District. I'm not lost. I'm learning how to live like everyone else. Child, you got yourself quite a project there, she said to me. Tell me about it. When we reached my stop, Max followed me off. We walked through Riverside in the morning light, and I watched him see my neighborhood without the dramatic backdrop of storm and emergency. Kids were walking to school, Mrs. Chen was hanging laundry, and the smell of coffee and breakfast was drifting from open windows. It's not what you expected, is it? No, it's alive. There's so much happening. So many people actually talking to each other. As opposed to what? As opposed to my neighborhood, where everyone stays inside their gates, and the only people you see are landscapers and delivery drivers. When Mama came out to water her plants, she took one look at Max and raised an eyebrow. Morning, Sarah, you bringing home strays now? Mama, this is Max. Max, this is my mother, Evangeline. Mrs. Delacroix, it's a pleasure to see you again. I looked between them. We met yesterday. He was very polite. What are you doing here, Max? You said to show me your world. I figured I should see where you live when you're not walking through storms, returning wallets. Mama's expression softened. You, the one sent those groceries. Yes, ma'am. That was kind of you. Expensive but kind. It was the least I could do. Was it? Or was it the most you thought you could get away with, without seeming like you were showing off? Max blinked, clearly not expecting that level of directness. Mrs. Delacroix, honestly, I don't know the difference. I've never had to think about it before, but I'm hoping your daughter can teach me. Mama looked at him for a long moment. Well, at least you're honest about being ignorant. That's more than most rich folks manage. When Daddy came around the corner, home from his early shift, he saw Max and stopped, immediately wary. Sarah, everything all right? Fine, Daddy. Max was just leaving. But Max stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Delacroix. I'm Max Beauregard. I wanted to thank you for raising such an honest daughter. Daddy shook his hand, his rough, stained hands contrasting with Max's soft ones. I watched Max's face for any sign of distaste. There was none. She gets that from her mother. She told me you work at the docks, when there's work to be had. What kind of work? Loading, unloading, moving cargo, whatever needs doing. Max nodded like this was fascinating. That must be hard work. Hard work never killed anybody. It's the lack of work that'll get you. Mr. Delacroix, would it be possible for me to come see what you do sometime? I've never seen how cargo ships actually get loaded and unloaded. Daddy's eyebrows rose. You want to come to the docks? If you don't mind? I'm trying to understand how things actually work, instead of just assuming I know. You ever done manual labor before, son? No, sir. You sure you want to start? I'm sure. I need to start somewhere. Daddy studied this young man in expensive clothes, who was asking to do hard physical labor for no apparent reason. All right. Thursday morning, 5 a.m. sharp. Pier 17. Don't be late, don't complain, and don't expect anyone to go easy on you because of your name. Yes, sir. Thank you. After Daddy went inside, Max and I stood on the porch. Thursday morning at 5 a.m., I said, I'll be there. You know he's not kidding about not going easy on you, right? Dock work is brutal. I figured, and you're still going to do it. How else am I going to understand what it means to earn money instead of just having it? I stared at this man who'd probably never set an alarm earlier than 9 a.m., who is volunteering to show up at 5 in the morning to do back-breaking labor. You're either braver than I thought or stupider than I imagined. Probably both. Mrs. Boudreau called out from her store across the street. Sarah, you got a minute, baby? I looked at Max. I have to see what she needs. Can I come? You want to meet Mrs. Boudreau? I want to meet everyone you think is important. We walked to Boudreau's corner store, crammed with everything from milk and bread to motor oil and lottery tickets. Mrs. Boudreau had been running the store for 30 years and knew every person in the neighborhood by name. Who's your friend? Sarah. This is Max. Max, Mrs. Boudreau. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Boudreau. She studied him from shoes to haircut. You from around here? No. Mom, where are you from? Garden District. Long way from home, aren't you? Yes, ma'am. What brings you to Riverside? Max glanced at me. Sarah's teaching me some things I should have learned a long time ago. What kind of things? How to be a better person. Mrs. Boudreau started to laugh. Not mean, but genuinely amused. Child, you got yourself quite a project there, so I'm learning. Well, if anyone can teach you how to be decent people, it's the Delacroix family. But you better be serious about it because that girl there is worth 10 of most folks, and if you hurt her, you'll have the whole neighborhood to answer to. The casual protectiveness in her voice hit me harder than expected. This was what Max couldn't understand about places like Riverside. We looked out for each other. We might not have much money, but we had community. I understand. I'll do my best to be worthy of the trust you're placing in me. Mrs. Boudreau studied him another moment, then nodded. We'll see. As we left the store, Max asked, Does everyone in your neighborhood interrogate strangers like that? Only the ones who show up with their daughter at 7:30 in the morning wearing clothes that cost more than most people's rent. My clothes don't cost. He stopped. Okay, they probably do. The suit you were wearing last night? That probably cost more than Daddy makes in 2 months. Max was quiet as we walked. I could see him doing the math, trying to understand the scope of the disconnect between his world and mine. Sarah, when you returned my wallet that night, were you angry? Were you angry that I had so much money when you needed it so badly? I thought about that night, standing in the rain, holding all that cash. Double quotes, yes. I was angry, but you brought it back anyway. Yes. Why? Because being angry at unfairness doesn't give you the right to make it worse. He stopped walking and looked at me. Say that again? Being angry at unfairness doesn't give you the right to make it worse. God, I've been making it worse my whole life, haven't I? Probably, but you're trying to do better now. Am I, or am I just playing at being poor for a few weeks until I get bored? It was a fair question, I don't know. But I guess we're about to find out. We'd reached my front gate again. It was time for me to get ready for my day shift. And Max probably had meetings or calls, or whatever rich people did with their time. I should go. Yeah, me too. Will I see you tomorrow? Are you still planning to show up at the docks Thursday morning? Yes. Then you'll see me before then. I'll be at the Meridian building tonight, cleaning the 14th floor. Maybe I'll work late. Max, don't make extra work for yourself just to see me. What if I just want to see how late you actually work? I looked at him standing there in his expensive clothes in my shabby neighborhood, and I realized that something fundamental had shifted between us. He wasn't just curious about my world anymore. He was curious about me, and despite every warning voice in my head, despite every reason I had to protect myself from getting involved with someone so far outside my reality, I was curious about him too. The 14th floor after 10 p.m. I'll be there. He started to leave, then turned back. Sarah, yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to figure out who I want to be. I watched him walk away, back toward his world of privilege and possibility. And I stood there on my front porch, wondering what the hell I'd just gotten myself into. Because whatever was happening between us, whatever this was turning into, I had a feeling it was going to change both of our lives in ways neither of us could imagine. And for the first time in my adult life, the possibility of change didn't terrify me. It excited me.